Hi, welcome everybody. Please join me for the pledge. Join me in the pledge of allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So Mike, if we could. Yeah. So first of all, I just want to welcome. So we had Andrea moved out of Sutter Creek, and then Lisa was interested in rotating off. So we have two new planning commissioners tonight. We have Rob and Laura, and I'll let you guys get to know them, before and after the meeting. But I just want to welcome you guys. So thank you for doing this. So Aaron's going to swear you guys in. If you can maybe come up to the podium.
All right, if you guys can stand here. All right, if you can raise your right hands and then repeat after me. I, and say your name.
I, Robert Trudgeon,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the Constitution
and allegiance to the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you. And I'll have you sign this after the meeting. Thanks.
Welcome. Next on the agenda is the public comment. Not on yet. Jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Seeing none, we'll move on. Consent agenda, Planning Commission minutes of March 10th, 25. Have any comments? I was absent. I had the flu and cold, so I didn't show up for that one.
It's accurate.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Public hearing, conditional use permit for short-term rental, 90 Boston Alley.
And I unfortunately have a conflict of interest.
Oh,
I have a house
that's right.
2 doors down, so I don't know if you want me to stepping down or stepping out.
I think step out is typically,
Yeah,
and then we'll come get you when this is done.
good.
Who?
At least it's not freezing.
Good one.
You gonna kick this one off, Aaron?
Yes, so this was continued from last month's meeting because we did not have a quorum. But the applicant who is here, Sandra Burns, submitted an application for a conditional use permit to use a single bedroom and bathroom in her existing home as a short-term rental. The house is located at 90 Boston Alley, and she is able to separate the bedroom and bathroom from the main house with a door with deadbolts. The property currently contains the existing main house, a detached accessory dwelling unit, and then the barn that is next to the Monteverde store. She has the required 1 parking space for the use by the resident or the short-term rental. As we have discussed previously with the short-term rentals, the city council is kind of keeping an eye on them. We are nearing that 20 units. And in fall of last year we did go to the city council and asked about, for direction, and they said, kind of keep doing what you're doing, and we will consider if we need to put any type of cap or limit on them in the future. But at this time, they were okay with.
Is
the
this not
numbers.
number 20?
Let's see, what was this? There's 18, so this would be 19, and then the next one on the agenda, I believe, is 20. Yes. The general plan and zoning allow for short-term rentals in a residential zone as long as they secure a use permit. And that is what this is tonight. So if you have any questions, I can answer them. And like I said, the applicant is also here.
I do have one question. I know it's a room within the dwelling. Will you be living in the dwelling? So if there's noise complaints, you're there to immediately address those?
What, can you come up to the microphone just so we can get it into the record? Thank you. It should be. There's a green light if there's a. green light.
Okay, it's on. Can
Okay.
you hear me better?
Yes.
It, the way that it's really like side by side houses, they built one house and then elevated it when they realized how much water there is at the bottom of the hill. And then added on an entire second house. So it's really two separate, it's very easy set up as two separate dwellings. I'm on the back end near the
Okay.
kitchen and dining room. And there's a door that closes off the living room, and there's a living room and a bedroom. And then a bathroom that's they call it a quarter bath. It's not, it's for the two bedrooms,
Mhm.
but it only can be accessed by one bedroom. So I put a deadbolt on that door, on the bathroom door, and there's a door inside the front door that has a deadbolt on it.
Okay.
So I will be living there, and I will have included in my marketing for the unit that there is a noise ordinance and that they have to abide by the rules or they'll be asked to leave.
Okay.
I'm not too concerned about it.
Thanks. Aaron, I just had a question. It seems like these are a little different than I think Judy Parkinson has one where people stay in her house while she's there too, one of the bedrooms.
It's similar. It's actually almost identical. Judy's just a little
Okay.
less cautious than I am.
But
I mean, she could
it-
put deadbolts on the same types of doors and block it off the way that I did.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
But
don't know.
I think the question I have is, it doesn't seem like these should count towards the number because they're not quite like,
Yeah.
I
'cause
mean,
you're-
because some of the issues are taking inventory out of housing, and you're still there. You have an ADU in the back that you rent out, I take.
Not yet. I
Okay.
bought the house I bought the house with my sister with the intention of having our brother live there he's disabled. But
Okay.
his condition worsened and we can't care for him there any longer. He has to be in a facility. So I wanted to use that as an Airbnb, but found out through this process that ADUs cannot be used as
Oh.
Airbnbs.
Yeah.
Like, that's a state law, isn't it?
That's it. It's what is in our code.
In the city code or the state
Yes,
code or
In the
both?
city's code.
It might be both.
Did you just adopt it from the state? Can you do
No,
something
so it's
different?
not actually in our ADU ordinance. It's in our short-term rental ordinance or our
Okay.
regulations on short-term rentals. And so, Mike, to answer your question, when I do go back to the city council, I will identify which ones are these single room occupancies versus a full short-term rental, because if people aren't going to be having a party at this one.
Right.
They're not going to be, which then would bring an extra 10 cars or things
Right.
like that. So there
And
definitely are
they
different
don't
impacts.
really disturb the
Character of the neighborhood.
character of the neighborhood. You still have the same neighbor. And also it doesn't take away from the inventory of
Yes.
long-term housing.
Yes.
So I think there should be a distinction.
Yeah,
between
and I'll
those.
make sure that that is pointed out.
Can I make a comment? When I applied for the application for the short-term rental, I included the ADU because I didn't know that it was excluded. And I quite frankly would suggest that maybe the council discuss this matter, as a follow-up issue, because you're looking at 12.5% that you're not getting off that rental because I can't market it as as a short-term rental. So,
You could rent it out as a long-term rental.
or a 90-day rental, which is what I'm going to do. Furnished Finders is the app that people look for short-term, professionals, surgical nurses, police officers, people looking for jobs up in the area and they want a short-term rental.
But I
So-
think, but what you're saying is we are missing out on the TOT tax
Oh,
because
yeah.
we don't get TOT tax from
Right.
when you rent it for over 30 days. Yeah.
Right, right. So, and maybe it's a blessing in disguise for me because I've never done this before. I can certainly take care of one room and one bathroom and people that stay. It's an entirely different story when it's just a 1-bedroom cottage. It's small, but it's lovely. But that's a lot more work and it is different because it's separated from the house, even though it's on the same property. I'm not, people won't be allowed to have parties there. They just won't. That's going to be one of my rules, whether I had someone in the cottage or in the front bedroom. But yeah, all I'm saying is that could add up to quite a bit if I did well and I rented.
Well,
it, it
I
would-
think the rationale between the ADUs were created to provide additional affordable housing.
Exactly.
And when you take it out of that mix
Mhm.
and you create a short-term rental, there's the problem. So
I understand.
the ADUs are, anybody can just by right do an ADU, right?
Yes.
Okay. See, that's the issue. So
Right. I
it's trying to
understand.
create more long-term housing and more affordable.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yep. I don't think there's any wiggle room on that one. So,
Right. Okay. Do you have any more questions?
no, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Given that it meets all the city codes, we're under the 20, there's only one room and not the whole house, I move to approve this. Hold on, I forgot.
You could just say like adopt the resolution.
I adopt the resolution for the conditional use permit for 90 Boston Alley.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. All right. Our next item. Initial use permit, short-term rental, 110 Gopher Flat Road. Aaron?
Yes. So this is an application for a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 110 Gopher Flat Road. The applicant is proposing to rent this, the whole house, which is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house, about 50% of the time. This is also a home that they do live in. It's part of the year too. So they'll be going back and forth between renters and the homeowners living there. 2 bedrooms is required to have 2 parking spaces and they have sufficient room both on their driveway and in their garage. Approval of this one would put us at the 20 units, short-term rental units within the city. So we'll continue to keep tracking those. They are located in the R1 zone and short-term rentals require a conditional use permit to operate in the residential zones. So is the applicant here for this one? Someone know? I think they live, like I said, they live out of town part of the
Corona.
time.
Did we have some drop off? Because I thought this brought us to above that number.
No, I think when I recalculate, there were some that are inactive. So
My concern with this applicant specifically is when it lists an application property owner and the project contact, it's the same individual and their address is in Corona, which is the LA basin, 7.5 hours from here. As everyone at this table is well aware, if you're going to have a use permit for a short-term rental, you need to have someone locally that can address any issues. So should I approve this, it would be a condition that we have a local contact that's verified.
Public forum.
Yeah, I just had a question. Did she identify Aaron?
No, it's not at all on this, it's right here.
Yeah.
And so one of the conditions of approval, and again, we should ask for this information, and that might be a project for the city to kind of compile all of this information for all of the short-term rentals we have, is that someone is available, responding within 60 minutes. I read that as, may be able to be here within 60 minutes, but
Okay.
I agree, there needs to be someone that can help in case of emergency locally.
I just thought on this page, page 26 of the application where I says to identify a project contact. I thought that would be the individual responsible for coming to local. And in that situation, it's listed as the applicant, so. I have no additional comments. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody from the public have any comments?
Good evening, Justin Howard, Gopher Flat resident, next door neighbor, homeowner to the proposed short-term rental. Just wanted to take a moment to not necessarily protest against the short-term rental application, but rather the competency and the ability of the current homeowner, landlord, to actually monitor what's happening on the premises of their house. Somebody that, like I said, bought the home 6 months ago, right next door to it. The tenants there are do a lot of questionable activity. Seen zero in terms of enforcement or any type of mitigation for how the property's kept, behaviors going on, anything of that sort. So just think it's important to reiterate, we're talking about an individual that lives, 8 hours away with no traffic, and talking about a short-term rental. Again, I'm all about bringing tourism to this area, but just important to note the current tenants there in a long-term rental situation are a pretty poor example of the landlording situation.
So can I ask a question? So the current property owner rents it out to a long-term renter.
Correct.
Okay.
And they just bought it, is that what you're saying?
No, I just bought the house
Oh,
next
you did.
door.
Got it.
So have about a 7-month snapshot of
Okay.
data and events and activities that have happened there. So again, just something to note on that. It doesn't necessarily pertain to this decision, but just more of the overarching issue of ability to manage and mitigate issues.
Yeah, that's why we have that condition on there. And I guess I'm a little reluctant to just leave this as a condition. Oh, they got to do this sometime. I think you really need to get that information from the applicant before it even comes to the planning commission. And then there was also talk about looking at these short-term rentals for other inspections like smoke alarms and CO2, fire inspection. We're not pursuing that, or
Emergency exit mount,
what's that?
emergency exit.
Yeah.
mount in the event.
So the council, I
They
think
didn't
you
want to
referred-
deal with it?
You referred this to the council, they added a new insurance requirement, which is on there
Okay.
as well.
But all the other things, they didn't think it was
They
too
didn't add
onerous?
inspections. I think we also asked for the safety information, right? Floor plan.
Okay.
And they didn't want to,
Oh, we did add that. Right, Aaron, you speak.
I'm sorry. They added insurance and floor plans.
okay. But no inspection for smoke alarms or
No.
CO2, okay.
So I think what's important, especially we have 2 new planning commissioners too. In order to approve a project or to deny a project, you have to review the findings and either be able to make the findings or not be able to make the findings. So that's on page 22 of the packet are the list of the 5 findings for a conditional use permit. So something just to review
You wanna close
in-
public forum
in
then?
discussion.
Okay, any other public comments? Yeah.
I don't know much about business or planning meetings and all this stuff, but I just had a thought occurred to me. I was really quite surprised when I found out that nobody would be coming to my house to inspect it. And it's like, okay, great, I'm off the hook, except on the other hand, what if I don't have a smoke detector? What if there is a hazard? I mean, nobody's looking at my place to make sure it's okay. I can tell you it is, but everybody can tell you that, and nobody's checking. What's the whole point of the, I think $500 or $600 inspection fee that I paid? And where's that going? I know part of it goes to Aaron, but I don't spend a whole lot of time with Aaron. So I'm concerned about that too. And the suggestion I have related to that is, it probably isn't likely to use somebody that's on the city's budget to refer them to do that type of work. But I'm just thinking if when you're getting back to people in response to their applications and saying, we can't proceed unless you have this local point of contact in place, can you even make recommendations? So, and then in the process, so you kind of have,
We
And
can't make recommendations. It's
cannot.
they need someone locally, and if they live locally, they should know a bunch of people that
Okay.
can be the point of contact.
okay, so it's not an opportunity for the city
No,
to.
it's a
and-
condition that says basically if an event happens, if
Okay.
the fire department, police get called out for unruly behavior,
Okay,
that a responsible property owner or representative of that person
Okay.
is on the property within that time
okay, that's what I
frame.
thought. I just thought I'd put it out there. Thanks for listening.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Okay, any other public comment? Yeah.
This is the time.
My name is Billy Carey and I live in Sutter Creek. I'm Justin's father-in-law. I have a granddaughter that lives next door to this property you're talking about. So I've seen a lot of police activity at this house. I've seen cars that haven't worked for God knows how long, 3 or 4 cars stashed out and back. There's a bunch of crap going into the creek in the backyard. I just think we're miles away from approving anything until these people can show that they're responsible landlords at all in any way, shape, or form. What you're suggesting is a management company, I think a professional management company.
No, we're not suggesting anything. What we're saying is right now, under the code, they've put in an application for a short-term rental, and it's my understanding what you said, they've currently got long-term tenants in this dwelling right now. So ultimately, it sounds like they're going to be leaving and it will be converted to a short-term rental. As far as the city stance goes is, as long as it meets all the requirements and they have a local contact or representative that will be there should an event occur, then there's no reason from my standing from viewing this for us to deny it because it does meet all the current code requirements.
It does currently.
Yes.
Okay, currently, like literally as we're talking now, there's a large screen TV playing WWF wrestling at full blast on the front porch. That's all I'm saying is that
Yeah.
I think as long as somebody can go there, make sure it's a worthy dwelling and it improves the area, not
The problem with
unfrizzed
that,
area.
and we're kind of devolving here, is if the city takes on that job of doing assessments to see if something's, accessible and meets a certain standard and criteria, and the city takes on that responsibility of inspections, they're partly taking on the liability. So whilst we can recommend potential checklists, like a floor plan, having a checklist saying, yes, you have fire alarms, you have monitoring equipment to be safe. It would be the city would be overstepping if they did anything more than that. Now, if they are breaking city ordinances, if there is dumping and waste issues, that is something that should be called in with the police and the city council. And then, yes, that will violate codes. You can't have waste dumping. You can't have cars on the property. There are city, or I don't know the specifics, at 10 p.m. city ordinance. So I think there can be noises generated within a certain time period. I haven't memorized all of them, but I know there's specific conditions, and feel free to call the city police. I have on numerous occasions with some rowdy neighbors on my street, and they are very responsive.
Okay.
And that be the key. I mean, with something like this, we have a lot more power. You can revoke this if they start getting noise complaints, if they start having more police activity and they don't.
So if there's a
Time.
record,
I think my concern is to the credibility of the person who owns the
Yeah.
property, being able to make good decisions for who stays at that property.
and unfortunately, we don't have jurisdiction over that.
And that means that what you said is that the city will be responsible for the liability for everybody that comes into as a short-term rental then, should they decide to.
The long-term rental, your recourse right now, if it stays a long-term rental, is to call the city with complaints. Abandoned vehicles, dumping in the creek, noise complaints. And that's why we're concerned if this becomes a short-term rental, that we have someone local that will deal with these issues within 60 minutes.
Right.
So we're trying to resolve, I guess, in a long-term rental, you can have a neighbor from hell, which appears to what you have. Okay? A short-term rental, you may have a bad neighbor for a weekend, but not every day of the week for month after month. So this could be an advantage to you
Yeah, that's why we're on the fence.
if we get a local rep that will deal with issues. And I understand if they're willing to rent their place out, not care who they rent to and what kind of problems and what they do to the neighbors, maybe they aren't going to be a good short-term rental. That's what your concerns are.
But what I'm trying to indicate to you right now is based on the information we have, and from my standpoint, I can't deny this just because they may be shitty landlords. You know, in the event that this potentially does get approved, if events of this nature continue, it's going to be
Through code
a
enforcement,
record
this is-
showing
Okay.
multiple call outs, which is when we can step in. But until that time, I don't see myself denying it based on what you said, unfortunately.
Okay.
It could be a blessing in disguise.
Thanks for your comment.
Thanks.
I just wanted to add one comment about the inspections, because just for you guys, council did discuss it. And there were some hotel owners here that night who said that hotels are not subject to inspections. And so that kind of swayed the council about
Yes.
requiring it for short-term rentals and not hotels.
I would imagine hotels,
Yeah.
their insurance companies are probably pretty,
Strict.
Yeah.
That's just, that was the conversation.
no,
It's
that's
coming back.
interesting.
Yes.
Anyway, I expressed my concerns about approving this without having a local contact person. What's that?
Close public forum.
Yeah, any other public comments? No, close public comment period. Okay.
So again,
Any
you
other
guys-
comments, any concerns?
I guess the one thing I'm kind of worried about is we talk about density. And right on the corner, isn't there already one? Right on Gopher Flat and Cole,
Yeah, there is.
which is a few doors down from this. That's something we really didn't want. So that's kind of one of the things that, I mean, you could use that as finding one. I mean, the proposed use of the property is essential or desirable to the public convenience
Do you know what one?
input.
Here.
It starts getting into, do you really want an Airbnb row? And that's what makes me a little nervous.
Well, that all came up when these first came down, because I
Yeah.
was on the planning, were you on the planning commission then? And we talked about, I think Mancebo was doing theirs and Sally Knutson was right across the street. Are we gonna inundate one neighborhood with, and we didn't go there, and I don't think the council's there either.
No.
So we don't have that right now, so you can't, it's probably not a reason for denial unless you change the
Code.
Is there an order? Is it?
We haven't,
No, we never did we pushed the ordinance to them, they. kicked it
no,
back.
there's not a, no, there's just says that in residential zones, you need a CUP, and then we have the list of the conditions of approval. So,
But we could certainly verify the local contact if you want to put that into your motion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I definitely would like to see a confirmed, local contact within that designated 60-minute timeframe. I think having a landlord and operator that's 8 hours away isn't good enough for a short-term rental because things can go bad quickly if it
mhm.
is the
It's,
case.
it's a requirement of approval. You have to have that.
And
Yeah,
I would
so we
probably
could either
push it-
condition it that she, well, we need that information anyways. Either it would come back, you would confirm that we have that information, or we could add it as a condition if approval is what.
I don't think it needs to come in front of us again just for that one condition.
I
I
disagree.
Yeah,
I think in the future, we need the name of the contact person when we approve these, they come for approval.
I'd push that we push this off a month
Yeah.
to figure that out, because otherwise it gets stuck down a rabbit hole and
They probably have, they have
they
to
probably
give,
have somebody,
their tenants, they probably have to give 90 to 120 days to,
yeah.
I mean, look at the landlord tenant laws in California.
All right, I think we're divided, so let's take it to vote. I motion to approve this.
Okay.
Does anyone second it?
So just a reminder of how motions and things
Sorry.
work. So just because I've seen it, the intent not happen. If you move to approve it and then it is is not approved or you don't get the majority, it is then denied. So we don't want that. It sounds like we either want, do we have 3 to approve? And if that's not the case, it sounds like we need to continue.
Okay, so we'll say it again.
Right. So the option would be motion to continue with confirmation of the local contact.
Mhm. That's,
But
Everybody
Lucy is
can
free
agree?
to, Lucy's free to
I
make her
personally
motion.
think it's
Yeah.
a waste of our time, but
Yeah.
yes, I will continue it rather than.
But
reject
you
it.
can make your motion and see if you get a second. If you don't get a
No,
second,
that's fine.
So you're putting a lot of
Well, you-
pressure on our new commissioners.
you could say that these are all a waste of our time because
We tried to do this,
they're,
do an ordinance.
they're just rubber stamped, and if they make the conditions, they very rarely denied. The only thing I think the council didn't want to do that was it gives people from the public an opportunity. If it's just administerial, then it just gets approved and there's no one has a say in it, so. And then, you know, sometimes there's overriding considerations we can look at too. I just think through this whole process, I don't think it's onerous to ask who that person is and make sure it's not some made up name or,
Yeah.
you know, that it, you know, so the next door neighbors don't have to deal with this and the police don't have to deal with it. So I think that's a reasonable thing to do.
Would you like to amend your motion, Lucy?
I will amend my motion. So I'm just trying to find the address. 101 go for flat, isn't it?
110.
110. To do a continuance
Mhm.
of 110 go for flat for the short-term rental until such time we have a confirmed local contact that will manage the property.
I would second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
Last thing.
item number, let's see,
Awesome.
Italian.
Italian.
Yeah, Time Benham Society.
Are you okay with that one?
Yeah, so the applicant is requesting approval of a site plan permit for a shed, a 384 square foot shed
See.
that will be located behind or
Okay.
adjacent to the existing, let's see, what is it? Existing hall. The shed is for storage purposes only. So our zoning code requires site plan for any construction of new buildings in the C2 zone, which this is in. We will be discussing that on our next option, or next item. There's no required parking, landscaping is staying the same. Yes. The only
Yeah.
condition is that they must obtain a building permit. There's their own over 120 square feet.
It's not visible from the road. It's tucked into the side and it's less than 400 square feet.
Any public comment? If not, I'll close the public hearing and, or public comment period. Any other questions or a motion?
Would happily move to adopt this resolution.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring a discussion of site plan permits to the planning commission. Typically, in the 2.5 years I've been here, all site plan applications have come to the city council or to the planning commission. So any time you have to, what is it? Any remodel, demolition, construction of a building within R3 commercial industrial zones require site plan permit. There is a provision in the code that does allow some to be approved on a staff level. It still requires a public hearing. So it's the same process. Send the notice to the newspaper, which I think that's, I don't know, about $60 to $100. We send the notices out to the neighbors within 300 feet. That's staff time and postage. And we would hold a meeting where I would sit here. I would say, I'm going to make a decision on this site plan permit. Is there anyone here that is opposed to it? Is there anyone, just like you do, but it would be me,
Just you.
staff level, making these decisions. So I have always brought them to planning commission. Right now, we have this shed. I have another application, same thing, a shed behind a building, but because it's in the C2, needs a site plan permit. And so that's why I thought I would bring this to you for direction and discussion to see kind of what kind of items you are fine staff approving and which ones you would want the planning commission to approve. And then if you think that there needs to be any change to the public hearing requirement of the staff approval ones, and then any change in deposit amount. So it's a $4,000 deposit. So these people paid $4,000 for their site plan permit deposit for their tough shed that they're putting, their shed, who, probably doesn't cost much more than that.
But the deposit. you
Goes
don't spend all the
back.
Money,
No,
you
yeah.
just spend whatever his staff costs.
Yes,
are.
and
You
they
give
will get the money back. But for some people, an extra $4,000 out of their account, even though they get it back, may deter them from trying to do the project.
Doing-
That's changed.
It-
like
it-
C2 for certain shed structures less than a certain square footage shouldn't even have to go through this rigmarole, especially if it's not visible by the main road.
Yeah, so
That's something that has to be approved by the city council ordinance.
yes, so an ordinance change would be approved by the city council, but if I had direction from the planning commission on things like, Aaron, the sheds that are not visible, take care of them yourself. We
We have
could,
the other one, the professional office building, interior remodel.
yes, so then, again, that came to the planning commission. Did that need to come to the planning commission? No, but that's what we typically have always done, is brought them to the planning commission.
Right. I think
And-
if you give us policy direction, we work on the ordinance, we probably bring it back to you guys first and then bring it to council. The other thing to think about is it has no water, no electricity versus even if it was small, but it had a bunch of connections, that might be something you want to look at. There's different dimensions to it.
I guess they're, they're not extremely time consuming,
No.
other than us discussing them, because you
Exactly.
saw how quickly we got through these.
Yeah.
It's a common sense type thing, and we know it's in the ordinance and we do it, but if you think you're charging, you made the decision on how much to have a deposit, you could change that tomorrow.
Yeah,
You could say $1,000.
Well, so two things. First off, with deposits, having managed a public utility district and asking for large deposits, sometimes you go through them. And then you have to wait on responding from the applicant to re-up the deposit, or you've overdone the deposit and then you're trying to chase them down, you're spending more staff time. I think the deposits
Well,
should stand.
all I'm saying, no, I agree, if it's a major development project, you're not gonna get an argument from me.
I know,
I think historically, the
Yeah.
city's probably lost a lot of money with these big guys.
exactly.
Because they didn't take money. But again, that's an arbitrary thing, and to use that as a stumbling, over administered type issue, that could be adjusted based on the size of the project too.
Yeah.
If you're building a shed, why would you charge $4,000 for a deposit?
so for example, that project you just approved, would that have been an appropriate project to approve at the staff level?
But my question for that is, we get paid to be here regardless of how many hours it takes, so it doesn't really matter. Whereas you guys, I don't know if it's a salaried or hourly position, it could end up costing the city more. I don't see it as being an issue. Well, if it comes to that, then you may as well take all the short-term rentals off too, because we're just ticking boxes.
Not to
Yeah.
mention
For
sign
now.
permits and things like that. You don't wanna, we've been trying to get a lot of this stuff off
Yeah.
our plates anyway.
Try, but
Yeah, we talked about sign permits. We would need to get that one, probably an ordinance
That'd
to
be
come
great.
back. This one, I think we thought maybe we could do them together. The other thing, Lucy, is time, right? So the applicant has to wait until it goes to a planning commission meeting. So if it was a small shed, Aaron could approve it
No, I
that
mean,
week,
You wanna list some things that would be exempt from this? Go for it.
I
I'm
mean,
sure
the-
it'll be common sense type stuff.
And what we don't want is I approve that, we do these staff level approvals and it's going well until it doesn't go well.
Yeah, that's all right.
I think we'd include an appeal, so they would appeal
It
to
is-
the planning
yes.
commission, right?
There's always an appeal and it would be quicker than going to the planning commission, but there's still time because there's that 10-day public hearing notice period. And so we'd have to, it would maybe go from 30 days to 15 days. So again, is that enough of a savings in time to,
Because you're not gonna be able to just ministerial without doing a notice and
Yeah.
actually have a little mini public hearing
Yep.
at a staff level.
Laura has a
No,
comment.
if you're, oh, I'm sorry, Laura, did you have a comment?
Those were kind of my concerns as well as, first of all, it says that, the planning commission can pass this responsibility we have to a community development director. And I don't know if that's the case, because I was wondering by looking, because I was trying to figure this out myself as a new person to the commission. And then other concern is how many days are we really saving? And this is actually, except for last March, going back a year, only the fourth one of these types of issues that came before the planning commission to review. So that's a concern. And then how do you determine what the fee that's considered fair and equitable, which is something that could blow up, like you were saying, that could cause concern. And then additionally, what are the criteria? It only takes one example, and unless we did research, and then how much time would it cost for
Yeah.
ask you guys to do as research based on other examples, even outlier cases that could, be very expensive to a city, which we know we don't have the money. So those are,
Yeah.
many of my concerns that I have is that it doesn't really seem like it's saving that much time. It's not saving money. And we're not overburdened with the task at hand. Maybe if there's a secondary, I don't know if there is that type of process where you say, okay, I have this one, it's for a unit, blah, 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 and you want me to handle it or what? I don't know if there is that. We could say, okay, take it on versus we'll just see it through.
Yeah.
Or if that matters, but that's how I
The-
see it.
the really only reason I started to do a little more digging and thinking about this is because we had the shed on this agenda, and then we'll have a shed on next agenda. And I thought this seems like a lot of work. The applicant we just passed could have put this on their application that you guys reviewed last month and saved themselves another $4,000 deposit. Again, that's out of our control. And I don't want to make one wrong decision and then have there be an issue.
And that's what I'd say, I mean, for 2 points is one, we hold this meeting either way, so it's a good place that anyone can come to and speak. So that's probably why I'd say to stay away from it. Also, yeah, how much staff time would be spent trying to make every little detail matter to try and get that ordinance exactly how we want it? I feel like just keep them coming. to
Okay.
here. Thank you for thinking of us.
Yeah, long term, if there are a few of these, it might be worth looking at a change of ordinance.
Yeah.
That makes the certain structures that aren't visible to the road under a certain size, on a certain size property, because.
Or interior remodels that have no exterior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we did.
I think the
we had-
purpose of the site plan permit is a site plan, looking at the whole project, these commercial projects or industrial projects or higher density residential. How is this, going to look on redeveloping a lot? And I think maybe the wording isn't totally accurate in there, that's how sheds get caught in this process.
From my line of work, it's helpful. I go through them weekly, and it provides a really nice history on the property. I know when they're renovated, when it may have asbestos, may not, based on those renovations. But as far as approval goes, it's not needed. I like that the city, there's a record of it somewhere.
Could you get that information through a building permit?
Yes.
Yeah, not a
Not a
planning
process.
permit. Yeah.
I think if you're gonna spend staff time on things, get the sign ordinance done.
Yeah.
Get those, There's no reason for that. Most of the signs were up before we even
know.
Exactly.
get to
Months.
approve them, so
Oh.
we've been trying to get that.
Well, I thought we were moving
Five
it just to
years.
the consent agenda anyway.
They've always. been-
Signs have always been on consent.
But why delay people
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
things? They meet the requirements of wherever they're at in the
Right.
city, just.
That's the other part of this, right? The signs come to you after they're up.
And they-
Most people, if the shed, if we told them $4,000, they'd put the shed up without coming to you.
Yeah.
So maybe you get better compliance if there's another process.
Or anything else? If not, the meeting
Yeah.
adjourned.